Hey everybody, welcome back to Cloud IT Live. My name is Scott Solomon and I'm the host of this online event. We have a really great session coming up from Virtru founder and CTO Will Ackerley. I've spoken to him a few times and he is an incredibly smart guy, pretty much the foremost expert on email encryption. We also have a special guest that will be joining towards the end of the webinar. That's Mark Johnson from the state of Maryland. So if you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to enter them in the GoToWebinar app on the side. And from here, I'll just turn it over to Will.
Awesome. Thank you, Scott. Can you see the presentation?
Yep, everything looks good.
Great. Yeah, I'm Will Ackerley, the founder and CTO of Virtru, and I'm here to walk you through some of the techniques that you can use to protect your email as you migrate to the cloud or you migrate additional data and use cases to your existing cloud infrastructure. And as mentioned, we're going to hear from Mark about techniques that he's used to migrate the state of Maryland further onto the cloud, and then we're going to give you a bit of a live demo of some of the techniques that can be used. While I walk through the presentation, I'm going to turn off my camera just a little bit. So generally speaking, really everyone is familiar with and has used the cloud plenty, but in the context of doing work, you really have to consider what difficulties there might be in controlling access to sensitive data that you might put on the cloud as part of a decision of using the cloud as a storage and collaboration mechanism for email, unregulated data, or sensitive IP. There are lots of different regulations that could apply to you, whether it be healthcare or other regulatory regimes. And also there are obviously big concerns about what might happen or what vulnerabilities you might have in the case of a data breach of a cloud provider that you're using. Particularly because email is a preferred means of collaboration and protection, it really makes sense to put a lot of work and focus into what technologies and capacity you have to protect your data in the context of email. So I'm going to be talking about 3 different general techniques for doing so. And the first is encryption. There are several different kinds of encryption that you can use, so I'm going to spend some time talking through what those are. Encryption in and of itself isn't enough. You need to be able to control and understand who has access to your data. And then you also are going to want to put in protection mechanisms that are automated and can give you insight into what kind of data might be generated and shared, and what kind of data you might actually want to put into something called a data loss prevention system. So from the standpoint of encryption, there are 3 different classic types, right? The first is point-to-point protection, also known as TLS. That content may be encrypted in some cases and in some cases not. So for TLS, you might not have full insight into where that data is encrypted. At a high level, there are 4 different places where your data is going to end up in the case of sending an email to an external collaborator. The first is obviously on your client machine where you're authoring the data. The second is on your ISP or your email provider's servers, and then your recipient servers and then their devices as well. When it comes to TLS, that's really focused on the connection between one device and another. So it might be between your mail client and your email server, but there are no guarantees that email is going to be protected all the way through. There has been a class of technologies used to try to solve aspects of that problem, particularly around data in transit. So portals have been deployed widely in order to try to address that problem in particular. What that does is it puts an additional system in your workflow that the email will go to and stay, and then be able to enforce, in particular, those TLS connections. So that's one upside. Potential downside of that approach is the content may still be stored at rest in an unprotected manner. Secondly, it moves the user outside of their normal workflow in terms of being used to being in their inbox. So it can be useful, but it's not a panacea. The third technique is data-centric protection, where really what you're doing is before the data leaves your client, you're encrypting that data directly. So it doesn't matter whether or not necessarily that data is then TLS encrypted again. It's inherently, essentially, self-protecting. There are several different approaches that can be used to do that. One is PGP. Another is S-MIME, and then Virtru as well is designed to have that encryption on the client and decryption on your recipient's device. So the second type of approach and thing to consider is access control, right? So what is that? That really is understanding and being able to enforce who has access and then how that data is being used and reshared. Obviously, people worry a lot about sending data to the wrong person, right? So maybe if you're trying to send to Alan, you might mess up and actually send to the all distribution list. And then the question is there something that you can do about that? Is there a dynamic access control mechanism that you can use to react to that? And then the second thing around access control is, in terms of how that data is used, can you track and potentially even control how your data is being reshared, right? After that first action to send an email, do you have the ability to monitor and react to that? We're going to go into that a little bit later. And then third, and lastly, really, do you have a data loss prevention mechanism? And what data loss prevention is a way of helping to ensure that you have additional controls around how sensitive data does or does not leave your environment without proper protection. And there are different things that you can do there, right? You can say, look, sensitive data like a social security number, maybe you want to block that under any condition. Maybe you want to always encrypt that data and then be able to track and control that. Or maybe you want to warn the user about the use of that kind of a data. And so one of the things to consider as part of a DLP solution is, what of those mechanisms does a DLP framework have? Secondly, in terms of the administrative burden, right, DLP is only as good as its configuration. And one is, do you have a turnkey ability to say, okay, I'm regulated under one industry or another, and can I pull essentially a template off the shelf to help me with that in terms of jump-starting that process? And then also, are there easy administrative setup rules and frameworks that I can use to set and monitor and react to those policies? So in this diagram, this is really highlighting the fact that an administrator needs to be able to do rule setup, apply that to emails, and also get alerts and feedback as to what might be happening to your data in your environment. So from a DLP standpoint, like I said, right, you can either decide to, for common types of data, automate detection and action like encryption, but you also can use it as an excellent tool for training in some cases, right? So not necessarily blindly taking action, but warning the user instead. So, and then also customizability. Every institution is always going to have a special case, and you really want to make it easy for a company to customize that. Traditional DLP vendors do have means for doing that. They tend to be require a lot of sophistication and a lot of training. Systems have been around like this for a while, Proofpoint, Symantec. So I think the areas for improving the user experience is really around making that experience easy for the administrator and not just the end user. And lastly, just to get at the education piece again, education of your users around what data might be sensitive is useful. If you have put the work into defining what data might be sensitive, it would be a shame not to be able to teach your users the position of your company in the context of their day-to-day workflows. And this can really extend beyond email, but the education points can start with email. If they're trying to send something and it's being sent externally, and then they can start to make more informed choices about what they're going to share and who they're going to share that data with. And this really gets to one of the biggest issues around security, right? It's not just the systems and the infrastructure you put in place, but it's also educating the humans and reducing human error. It is the cause of 62% of data breaches caused today. And this can range from people clicking on emails that did not come from the person who they thought it came from, like phishing. Authentication is a big piece of email security that can help contribute to that. And then obviously on the outbound side, if you send data to the wrong recipient, and either whether that was intentional or unintentional, being able to understand that, react to that. And then internally, just loss or theft of unencrypted devices or files. It's also a big issue. So we at Virtru have been asking, okay, what is it going to take to really make adoption of security technology that's really going to help the user a reality? So we break it down in 3 different ways. One is we have to make the tools very easy for the users and for the administrators, right? Part of that is using your existing identities online and being able to leverage the authentication mechanisms of the people who you're talking to, not just within your organization but outside, making it more secure. So at the time of creation of the data, it's protected inherently. You can let that data go anywhere you want. And then third, if you're going to protect that data, you also need a really intuitive means for taking control of that data. So that can take forms such as revocation, the ability to track and control forwarding, potentially expiring data automatically without having to take further action, or more advanced features like watermarking. In case someone wants to try to take a screenshot, you can audit who did that on a retrospective basis. So really, to put a fine point on it, what Virtru is doing is taking a very data-centric approach. This is the approach that my company is taking because we think this is the future of easy-to-use email and also the most secure means. But also, that requires integrating directly into the applications I use every day, whether that be Google, Gmail for work, or even your consumer Gmail, or Microsoft Outlook. You need to be embedded right in those environments. And then also give customers control, not just on a click-by-click basis when I'm sending an email, but of those encryption keys that are created to protect that content, giving you true control of that. Not from a administrative standpoint, but also that user standpoint to be able to go into your sent items and hit revoke. And then put those guardrails on the users with data loss prevention. Right? So if someone's moving too quickly, types in sensitive data that they shouldn't have and forgot to turn on encryption, you can set up rules to protect that. And then really make sure that you don't have to trust additional parties. You can actually use DLP, encryption and access control, so that no third party whatsoever can have access to the unencrypted content. Only your listed recipients will ever have access to that. And all those together, making sure that that meets the regulatory regimes that you might fall under, whether that be the consumer protection, criminal justice, healthcare, and then again, lastly, make it easy. Really is something you can deploy in minutes, yeah. So with that, I'm going to hand off to Mark Johnson, who we've been working with, and he's going to talk about what he's doing to move data and more users onto their cloud at the state of Maryland. He's responsible for Google Apps there across the state, as well as mobile device management and deployment.
Thanks, Will. Appreciate that. And once again, my name is Mark Johnson, working with the state of Maryland, and we're doing all kinds of great things with Virtru right now. First thing I want to do is just talk about some of our challenges before encryption and DLP. So before we had Virtru, we really didn't have as much control over our PII data, and we didn't really have the capability to, revoke messages and prevent, forwarding of emails or attachments. And we just had a high concern of, someone accidentally sending information out with PII data. So we had a very high concern there. So as we continued to look for different products and things out there, we were able to find, come across Virtru. And, since they integrated so well within our Google Apps system, it really made the ease of, rolling this product out a lot better. So what I want to talk a little bit about is like what we're using now and what we have now as well, because a lot of things that Will just talked about we actually are using. So the first thing is we were using and we have the ability to create DLP rules that automatically detect and encrypt email, things like the credit card number, some of the CGIS requirements, things like MPI numbers and DEA numbers. We're able to use certain patterns and put them in the system, which auto encrypt things. And it also gives us more visibility into how users are using the product since we have these DLP rules on. So once it encrypts it, we can see why it was encrypted. Another big perk is we have the ability to revoke and prevent forwarding after a message is sent, and once again that includes the attachments. We've been able to stop a lot of that just because people would get an email message, they forward it out, and then after that we have no control. So that feature really helps us out a lot. And one of the other ones we really like is the expiration part. So we'll send out a message and say, hey, you got 3 days to complete this task, and there's a little countdown starts as soon as we hit that send button. Everything, and then after 3 days it stops. It prevents them from using that data anymore. One of the other perks is with the Chrome extension, because it uses Chrome and it integrates into that so well, we're able to push that out using Active Directory. We're able to, it makes it a lot easier for the end user to get up and running real quickly. So that's very good as well. A newer feature we just started about a week ago is delegation. And if you use Google Apps, there's ways you can use shared mailboxes and so forth. And the delegation makes things a lot easier if you have a group of users, say 20 people sharing an inbox. They're able to now respond encrypted, read encrypted messages a lot better. So that's a new feature that we just got. On to the next feature, mobile app. For Android and iOS, we have the ability to use a mobile app, and we can create encrypted messages, we can respond, we can read attachments. We couldn't do that before with our previous product as well, so that really helps us as well. Next feature, the dashboard. Really like the dashboard. It's an awesome dashboard feature where every single user across the state that has this product can go in and basically see what they've sent encrypted. They can revoke it, they can disable forwarding, they can do all these things in one nice portal. And as an administrator, we have that ability as well to see anything sent throughout the state in one very simple portal. A new feature that we got a few months ago was read receipts. We didn't have that initially, and now for email tracking purposes, we have other tools that can send mass emails, but with this one, we can see when an encrypted message was sent and then also find out if someone read it. And then frequent updates to the platform. So this is one of those things as well that, you know, if you're a Google Apps user, you know they send out a lot of updates, you know, almost daily it seems. So Virtue's, you know, really on top of sending out updates. You know, I think we've had about 5 or 6 updates to the mobile app in the past month and a half since we, you know, using the updated iOS app. So that's been helpful. And then the last thing is that Virtue was really good with us in being able to provide a tremendous amount of support. I mean, they've been able to help develop certain things and customize certain things to our liking, and it just really made things a lot better. So we're really happy to be on board, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
With that, I mean, thank you, Mark. I really appreciate it. With that, I think it's time for a demo. So I'm going to show some of the features that and the approaches that Virtue is taking in the context that we laid out earlier, and I'll show you some of the things that Mark was mentioning in particular in our products. So like I mentioned, Virtue builds itself right into the apps that you use every day. So in the context of Gmail, with Virtue, you have this switch that you can toggle. And with that, everything that you type in the body of an email is going to be automatically encrypted before it ever leaves your computer. One of the things that we also do is support the ability to send to absolutely anybody. So it doesn't matter whether or not you're sending to someone who's seen Virtue before or someone who hasn't, either inside or outside your organization. It truly doesn't matter. This is going to be some patient data that I'm sending. So both some sensitive data like Social Security number and then an explanation of benefits form in the form of a PDF. So this PDF was automatically encrypted as soon as I dropped it in my Compose window. And it's now protected with the format that Virtue uses to encrypt anything that you would want to attach in an email. And then I hit Secure Send, and it goes off. So I've sent this to 2 different people, one person who's on Outlook desktop, and the other who is a new recipient on another Gmail account. So as a Virtue user, if I click on an email that's been sent by a Virtue user, I will automatically see this right in my inbox the way I normally would with any other email. The only difference is there's a little bit of an indicator that it's been encrypted, and then you can open these secure attachments very similar to what you normally would if it were an unencrypted attachment. And it opens right in my native Adobe Reader in the case of this PDF. In the case of a new recipient who's never seen Virtue before, it looks a little bit different. So they'll get this envelope. There's this customizable introduction that I could have filled in if I want, but, different from my default. And then really the only thing that this user has to do is click to unlock. So they will go straight to our Secure Reader app and authenticate. We are very agile about the authentication means that we use. So if they're send to someone at Yahoo, they can authenticate with Yahoo, or Microsoft or Google will automatically detect and invite them to authenticate with their existing identity. And with that OAuth technology, you go right into the email. This is all decrypted right on the recipient's device. And I can read the email, and I can also look at the attachment. So no software that you have to install to share with people, but you can also add it to your email account on a free basis as well if your recipients wish to do so. And then I can, in this particular case, download the attachment. But these are things that also you can control. And then your recipients can reply securely in the Secure Reader as well. All right, with that, I'm going to show some of the access control mechanisms that are built into the product. I'm going to go to my sent item and show you what it looks like in that context. So the first thing you'll see is that there are these little envelopes. This is read receipt. So Charles does not open the email, but the other Will account has. And if I mistakenly sent this to Charles and I want to revoke it, I can go ahead and revoke the entire email. And you'll notice that the recipients have their windows automatically updated and everything is fully revoked. Some of the other access control techniques that we empower our users with is the ability to disable forwarding ahead of time. So the default configuration is forwarding is allowed, and then you can go and track to see how that data is being forwarded. I can also set an expiration. So if I know that this is data that's only going to be useful to someone, let's say I'm sending this medical data to a health practitioner, I can, and she needs it for 3 days and I'm going to be talking to one of her coworkers, I can set an expiration. I also, from an access control standpoint, can go into my dashboard. So you just go to virtue.com/dashboard, and then I can see what's happening to my encryption keys and the policies around that. So I can go into an email to see how it's being forwarded. I can revoke right from here, and that will immediately propagate to all the users. And then from a DLP standpoint, I have the ability to do a very simple administrative switch of typical fields like social security number and credit card, but we also have rule packs. So if you're healthcare regulated, we can preload the things that can help you jumpstart your HIPAA compliance. And then you also have the ability to build custom rules. So we have some custom rules here, and you can do things like have these rules apply to senders that are in a particular organizational unit or a group, like human resources. You can have it look for things in the email body or the email subject, see if it contains a particularly sensitive term, and then you can take actions based on that, like either warn the user or additionally, do a blind carbon copy to a compliance officer and that sort of thing. I think with that, I'm going to take a pause, see if we've got some burning questions, and maybe I can steer things one way or the other.
Okay, we do have a bunch of questions that have come in here. Let me just see. How does Virtue recognize the SSN and credit cards, or even the password phrase in the email body?
Good question. So when I configure as an administrator the DLP rules in my dashboard, what happens is one of two things. I either, with the pre-baked rules like social security number, there's a regular expression. It's a pattern that's used to detect those. So 3 numbers with a dash and then 2 numbers and then or whatever the pattern is that could detect that. And that actually then gets sent to all of the email clients that your users have. So unlike traditional DLP, that would be done purely on a gateway where the DLP rules are not going to be scanned on the client. All these rules are actually occurring in my browser here, or if I were in Outlook or on my mobile device, those would be applied directly on the device, really as an endpoint solution.
With Google Apps, it seems like Google Drive has an even bigger need for encryption and DLP. Does Virtue have a solution for Google Drive security and compliance?
We do, and that's one of my favorite demos to give. So I would highly encourage anyone interested in Drive encryption to email me, will@virtue.com, and we can show you exactly what that looks like. A lot of the sharing paradigms are very similar.
Can the tool scan and remove data at rest on cloud email systems such as Gmail?
We have built migration tools, particularly because we're selling a lot to companies that have already created data and submitted in the cloud. And we actually partner with several cloud migration companies to assist in doing that.
And in the meantime, Will, if you can put up the last slide there, that'd be great as well, just so people have got your email address.
Thank you for the reminder.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you. Does Virtru have the same feature of the GAPS admin console, or do I still need to log into the admin console to make changes to my OU?
Good question. So the features that I showed that we configure within the Virtru dashboard, you log in just to the Virtru dashboard, but we do rely on and leverage the groups and OUs that you already have in your Google Apps. So we avoid duplication, and any changes that you make within Google are automatically going to be reflected within the Virtru system. So just to put a fine point on it, if you sent an email or shared a file with 20 people within a group, and you remove one of those people, because they're no longer in that group, they will no longer have access to that data.
Okay. If the recipient doesn't use Virtru, would that be a portal-based encryption scenario?
No, not quite. It is a web app that I showed the secure reader. All of the decryption happens in browser in the recipient. Traditional portals, the data is sitting resident in the portal provider. In our case, we're really providing a web application so that your recipients can do all of that directly on their device.
Okay. Will this work with Office 365 Online?
Yeah, it's coming very soon. We're in beta right now. And so if you're interested in getting a preview of that, we would love to talk to you.
Okay. Great. Just getting the cue that it's almost time to wrap up, but I'll take another one here. Do the emails go through a Virtru mail server? If so, what are the SLAs and how is security done?
We actually do have SLAs for our customers. Really, we are our specialty is key management. The emails that are encrypted do get stored on Gmail or Microsoft. But obviously, if you're going to be encrypting your data, you must have key access. So we have strong SLAs, and we can be happy to walk you through the architecture to make sure that we have very high availability.
Okay, great. And I'm just about to run a poll here. We do have one polling question for the audience. If you guys can just take a moment to answer this poll. And in the meantime, I have one more question I can ask Will. Will your Drive product work with AO docs?
Absolutely. We have a very tight integration with AO docs. It's, I would say, the best document management add-on for Drive. So when we can put you in touch with them, or if you want to reach out directly to them, definitely do so.
Okay. Just going to close off this poll here, and then I have one last question. Do I need to buy licenses for my entire domain, or can I just buy for one OU?
Most of our deployments are company-wide, and we can work with you on that. But if you want to deploy just for a small group, we do that as well.
Okay. Now I'm just about to hand it back to Scott here. What I am going to do is just post our URL for our link in our last slide here, just in the chat box for everybody if you'd like to set up a time for a private demo. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Will and Mark, as well as Emily with the questions. That was a really insightful presentation. So we have one more session for the day. That'll be at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. It's about Google Apps Script and using it with Cloud SQL. So really looking forward to that session. And with that, we will end out this webinar.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.